Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this short clip, I want to talk about the main structural differences between building a cob home and a framed straw clay home. And the framed system here also applies to hempcrete. So these two prototypes I have designed out here in SketchUp. I've built both of these two buildings, and so I can show you the real life photos and videos from these as well. But let's run through the SketchUp models here. So let's just take a quick look at the foundations. And there's not much difference between doing a foundation for cob or straw clay. But this also applies to straw bale, rammed earth, adobe, and several other building methods. A strong foundation is critical for the longevity of any kind of structure. And this is kind of the way I like to do foundations. There's a number of ways you can set up a foundation. This is what I've found works for me, at least. There are other ways, and I have other videos covering those ways as well. But let's stick to this main concept of foundations here. So we have a slab. This is a concrete slab reinforced with metal rebar. And on top, we have a stem wall, this section here. And this stem wall basically lifts your cob or your straw walls up off the ground and helps to protect them from rainfall, splashback, and water runoff. This is critical, in my opinion, if you're in any kind of temperate or climate zone that gets a lot of rainfall. If you're in an arid or desert climate, the stem wall is not as critical. You can just go with a flat slab and lay your wall right on top of the slab. So you'll see here we have a regular slab on grade. Now if we go over to the cob house design here, I don't have it fully designed out in the model here, but on the actual cob building that I've constructed, what I recommend is a reinforced concrete slab. So basically it's thicker underneath where the walls are. So the section of the foundation where the walls set, that part of the concrete slab is thicker and it's deeper there. Whereas in the middle of the structure, it's thinner. And this reinforced slab is good for any kind of masonry style wall system because they're really heavy and they need that extra the extra thickness to the foundation there. So let's go back. You'll also see in the cob house we have the same kind of stem wall. So it's really the same. It's a concrete slab and a stem wall. It doesn't have to be made out of brick. It can be stone, concrete block, concrete, any kind of water resistant masonry material. I do like the brick. That's my material of choice for the stem wall though. Now going back here, the actual wall system itself, now you'll see it's all framed. So on top of the stem wall is what's called a sill plate, and this is attached. You don't see it in the model here. There's actually metal bolts. They're called J bolts. These J bolts integrate from the stem wall up through this wooden sill plate, and you bolt the sill plate tight down to the top of the stem wall. So that creates the integration and the transition point from your masonry foundation to your wood framing. So on top of the sill plate we have what's called a Larson Truss, and that's basically just two separate 2x4s with spacers in between. So you can adjust the length of the spacer to whatever width you want your straw clay wall to be. It's a really easy wall framing system to set up. So in this case, these are 9 1/4 long. So if you wanted, let's just say, a 16-inch wide StrawClay wall, you would just adjust these spacers to conform to that measurement. And so with the StrawClay system, similar to hempcrete, you're going to put up, basically temporarily tack up plywood on the outside and inside of the Larson Truss, and then inside the void pack your StrawClay or hempcrete material, and then remove the siding, and you have your wall being formed. It's the same with the Cob slip form method, which I've shown in lots of my newer videos. That's the system I use nowadays. Or you can hand sculpt the cob. But you'll see there's no wooden framing inside the cob walls. Cob walls do not have wooden framing inside them. That's not to say you can't put framing inside cob. You can, but it's not traditionally the way you build cob. Normally there's not wooden framing inside of cob walls. So the difference here is a framed system infilled with the StrawClay material or the hempcrete, whereas cob is just a solid mass monolithic cob wall. Now here, another difference is the window installation system. This highlighted section here, I would call this a window buck. And you basically create the buck, set the buck at whatever level you want to be, and then you attach it, usually with screws, to the wall framing system, the Larson trusses. So this is really easy to set up, and then you just fill in the sections that you want enclosed with the StrawClay wall. So that's really easy to create. With the cob, it's a similar system, except you have to install the window buck as you build the wall up. And I have another video on this. I'll leave a link in the corner here. It shows more in detail the steps taken to install the window buck. Basically, you build the cob up to this level, install the window buck, and the window buck for cob looks like this. You'll see this section on both ends. This is the permanent part that's embedded into the cob wall, and all of this in between here, this is all temporary, just to create a void and a space to build around. And so in the end, all that comes out, and you're just left with these the exterior window framing and these window anchors, which are embedded into the cob wall itself. And so you continue to build up the cob around that until you get to the top, and then you install either a lintel or a bond beam on top of that, depending on the height of your cob wall. So the window installation systems are a little bit different. And then as far as the transition between the wall system and the roofing system, on the StrawClay frame system, you have what's called a top plate. This is a 2 layers of dimensional lumber stacked on top of themselves. This creates what's called a top plate, and this is a very easy transition from the wall framing to the roof framing. Whereas with cob, we have a different system here. This is a concrete bond beam, and then the top plate is actually fastened and bolted on top of the concrete bond beam. And then that creates your easy roofing transition. So you can also do with cob, if you don't want to do the concrete bond beam, that's more work and sometimes not necessary. You can actually just double layer 2, I guess you could call them top plates, the same way we did here on the StrawClay structure. You could just double layer across the whole top of the wall, and skip the concrete section. And then again, you'd have your transition from cob to your roofing. So these are some of the main differences in components between creating a cob structure and a framed StrawClay or hempcrete structure. And again, the main difference between a cob structure and a StrawClay or hempcrete structure is cob is high thermal mass, low insulation. StrawClay hempcrete is high insulation, low thermal mass. So it's going to depend on what you build is going to depend on your climate zone and some other factors such as your timetable of building. Cob usually takes longer, there's more labor involved, whereas the hempcrete and the StrawClay is faster to frame up and to infill. So these go up faster, these kind of structures. Cob goes up slower. So it just depends what you want and what kind of climate you're in, if you want high thermal mass or if you want high insulation. So if you guys have any questions, please leave them below in the comment section, and I'll get back to those soon. And thanks for watching.